Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Before we get to today's subjects, let's go ahead and take care of some housekeeping notes. Follow me on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. Be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Give us a like, rate, and review us wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the network at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. There, you can get our interviews ad-free and before anybody else with athletes and celebrities. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. A bunch of cool stuff you can wear heading into this fall season. That's teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. And play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Let's go ahead and get into this Saturday edition of Sports from the Couch. To start off this episode of Sports from the Couch on a Saturday, September 5th, 2020, in the beautiful city of Chicago, I think we need to talk about what was one of the big stories in all of sports just a few days ago. Steve Nash, former MVP and all-time great when it comes to playing the point guard position in the NBA, has been hired by the Brooklyn Nets to be the new head coach. No coaching experience from the guy himself, Steve Nash. From what all reports are saying is Curry and Durant were cool with this move, but more than anything, the reaction from media members and pundits in the NBA really struck a nerve with a lot of people. And of course, in 2020, you have to be blind to not realize the implications of this when it comes to hiring of minorities and people of color. And this is an interesting one. This is a nuanced conversation, especially specifically with Steve Nash. Now, he doesn't have any coaching experience, right? But we've seen recently in the NBA, that really doesn't mean anything. Even the same thing in Major League Baseball. A lot of star players or a lot of quote-unquote smart players that you hear that rhetoric from around the league while they were players make the jump to head coach, to lead manager very fast. And this was a weird one where we have Stephen A. Smith going on First Take and saying that this doesn't happen for a black man, that this is white privilege. And then you have Charles Barkley on Inside the NBA talking about that he's a good dude, that he's disappointed in some of the guys on television, that we've seen this happen to guys like Doc Rivers, Jason Kidd, and Derek Fisher. And this is one of those scenarios where both guys are right. I definitely think there was an easier sell for Steve Nash because he was a white point guard who also was super good, MVP, changed the way offenses were run in the NBA. But he's right. Like, there's a lot of black coaches that haven't been hired. I mean, look at Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing has gone through the grind, and nobody wants to hire him in the NBA. So I think this is a twofold conversation. What type of coach are they looking for? And what resume do you need to be a head coach in the NBA? And I think unlike many other sports where, let's say specifically football, where it's a sport where you are making schemes and plans and doing this for 52 guys and doing this for 16 weeks. And there's much more of a tactical approach in the National Football League than, let's say, the NBA. Not that there isn't for the NBA. And you have to have guys that are able to draw plays for star players. But I think the NBA is much more of a leadership thing. It's much more of a figure type of thing when it comes to the head coach, opposed to the National Football League. I think the one thing we all can't deny is that there is a disparity between white coaches and black coaches amongst all sports. People of color, black, there's not enough. There's not enough Ron Riveras and Lovie Smiths amongst college and the National Football League ranks. We know this. And I know a lot of people get sick of it because it is an easy talking point for talking heads on television. But here on Sports from the Couch, I'm not here to try to pull up the heartstrings. I'm seeing what's right in front of us. And that is a true disparity. Do I think Steve Nash is a hindrance to that? I don't. I think he might end up being a good head coach. I don't know why he wants this job specifically. And here's another thing I don't think many people are mentioning. Steve Nash took this job as his first job in the NBA. He might have had the itch to go to do this. Not many great coaches that want to implement plans and set up a system and create this new culture amongst whatever organization they're working for. They don't want to do that in Brooklyn. That is a Kyrie and KD team. Period. So I don't think you're going to get a lot of coaches that were going to be high regarded, like, let's say, like a Nick Nurse. I don't think Nick Nurse was ever going to leave Toronto to go to like a Brooklyn team. Not with those type of superstars, but a Steve Nash can. A Steve Nash can understand what a lot of these guys are going through on a much more personal level. But beyond that, you're not going to disrespect Steve Nash the same way you're going to disrespect a different coach. Look, this is a players' league. And if the players don't respect you, if they don't like you, that's it. And who in the NBA is not going to like what is known to be a good dude in Steve Nash? So I think when you're talking about this situation specifically, you have to have nuance. Yes, there's not enough minority coaches in major sports. There's not enough women coaching in major sports. That's a true statement. With that being said, Steve Nash has what it takes to be a head coach in today's NBA. The way we've seen coaches be hired in the NBA. You no longer have to be on the bench like Tim Duncan is doing with Becky Hammond. Like, they're earning it. They're going through the bus and completely through the grind. But sometimes you have a situation like this, and there's also exceptions to the rule. This is a former MVP who changed the way the game was played, who seems to be very smart and adaptable, and also still has connections to this league. That's huge. That's a huge get, especially if you know you're not going to try to just get the X's and O guy like a Brad Stevens. I understand what Berkeley was doing. I don't agree with Steve Nash was doing. I think Steve Nash could have held off a little bit more, done the Steve Kerr route, and gotten himself a very nice team that he could kind of just be ingrained with, opposed to jumping to a team with two superstars who are super veterans, have won MVPs, have won NBA Finals, and now going to the big stage. That's just my personal opinion. It could completely work, and God bless them. I'm just thinking right from the hire, I don't like it necessarily, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how they respond to him, how they return back from injury, how they return back from all this that's going on with the bubble and the social unrest. It's a different conversation a few months from now. But right at this moment, I think both things are true. I think Steve Nash made the right choice for his career to jump into whatever team was going to hire him. Because I don't know how many people wanted to hire him. I don't agree with him going with Brooklyn because I think that can end up being very messy. But I also understand people's emotions and people's thought process of why him? Why now? Because the optics aren't as nice as they would have been 10 years ago. Not right now. But I think it's fair to ask, why aren't there enough minority, people of color, black head coaches in all major sports, while also understanding that this hire isn't a spit in the face of that. This is an exception. This is an MVP, and this is a guy that is renowned around NBA and the NBA players. But let me know your thoughts. What did you think? Steve Nash, the new head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram Mike Mercado Media, and the show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. We are just 5.5 days away as of this recording from the start of the NFL season. And we have some news coming from Hallis Hall that the Chicago Bears have made their decision on who the starting quarterback will be. That prestigious battle that was between Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles has been won by number 10 himself, the number 2 overall draft pick a few years ago, Mr. Not Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. That's right, Mitchell Trubisky. This comes from Adam Schefter's Twitter account at Adam Schefter, the real one. Make sure you guys are always checking for the blue check mark. In a competitive battle, Bears are expected to name Mitchell Trubisky the starting QB, sources tells ESPN. It's due to his progression, leadership, and overall performance throughout camp. Nick Foles made decisions difficult for Matt Nagy, but the team feels strong about its QBs. And I'm going to go over to ESPN.com where they continued on this conversation. And they talk about Trubisky and Foles have been locked in a battle for the starting job throughout training camp, even rotating days on the first team since padded practices began on August 17th. In 2018, Nagy's first season as head coach, the Bears went 12-4 as Trubisky passed for 3,223 yards and 24 touchdowns with 12 interceptions and rushed for 421 yards with 3 touchdowns. Trubisky, while playing much of last season with a shoulder injury that required surgery in January, ranked 28th in the NFL in total QBR, tied for 27th in touchdown passes, 21st in passing yards, and 32nd in yards gained per pass attempt, and 28th in traditional quarterback rating at 83% as the Bears finished 8-8. They also mentioned that Matt Nagy had insinuated that he wasn't going to pick a quarterback until coming up this next Monday, which would have been game week. But all that being said, let's talk about a few things. One, they gave up assets for Nick Foles. This is what's so frustrating is you see some of the guys who got signed in free agency, and this is what you end up with is Nick Foles because he knows the offense. Are you guaranteeing that it's the offense that's going to fix this team? That it's not just that Mitchell Trubisky is kind of a bust, but maybe Matt Nagy's offense isn't all that great? You had somebody like Cam Newton in the market, and you didn't even make an attempt to bring him into camp. Why? Look, at the end of it, I think this is what's going to play out. I think it was always a guarantee that Mitchell Trubisky was going to be the starting day quarterback for the Chicago Bears against Detroit on September 13th. I thought that was a shoo-in. The real question became, does he finish the season as the starting quarterback for your Chicago Bears? I always thought that was a foregone conclusion that he was only going to play 2 or 3 games before getting benched. If that was always the goal, why Nick Foles and not Cam Newton? Just explain to me how you had the opportunity to not pay for anything, not give up anything, not give up any assets that this franchise has done for the last few years that have put them behind the 8 ball. Why Cam Newton was not brought in, but Nick Foles was thought to be the savior of this offense? And look, if within this training camp, even with the limited amount of time that you were able to practice and contact, if this wasn't telling enough that he was good enough to beat Trubisky for the job, what makes you think during a regular season that's going to happen? And now are you telling me that the first few games don't matter? Because if you believe that at some point Nick Foles is going to take over that job, because otherwise why would you have brought him in? Then why not start him out there? You're saying, well, we're willing to risk these games with the quarterback we don't have as much confidence in. I'll ask you right now, knowing everything that we know, and what people were even telling you then, would you not want a quarterback like Cam on your team right now? A guy when healthy can dominate a game? And it's not like Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky are the $1 million man who are always staying healthy, right? The $6 million man, I guess he's going to be the $6 billion man now in the Mark Wahlberg movie, if that ever happens. Think about that. Like, what were they looking for? This offense is broken. They don't have a running game. You have Montgomery who's been hurt. Then Leonard Fournette is on the market for what? 12 minutes? And they go ahead and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers like, yeah, we're all in. Let's bring in another talent for nothing after he goes through waivers. Are you going to even look at Adrian Peterson? I don't like Adrian Peterson, the dude, but are you going to look at him? What is the message of this Bears team? Why are you wasting the talent of a Khalil Mack? That defense is so good. That defense is going to keep you in games. It's going to win you games. And all you're going to end up doing is going 6-10 because that's what your offense is a 6-10 team. All this will always stand back to you didn't draft Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. And as long as Trubisky is the quarterback and he doesn't live up to where he was drafted, which isn't his fault, he didn't get to choose to be drafted second overall. He didn't choose to get drafted over these other 2 quarterbacks. But as an organization, you would put him in that position. And now you are in the position where if it doesn't work with him, you're back to the bottom of the league where you've been. It's embarrassing when other teams in this league are fighting over how much money should we give our franchise quarterback, opposed to can we ever find one? But for Bears fans, at least you know you have a starting quarterback week 1 in Mitchell Trubisky. Let me know your thoughts on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram Mike Mercado Media, and on Twitter, the show, you can find us at Couch Sports Talk. Make sure you're with us on the network as we will be making our confidence picks every single week, along with updates on our fantasy teams and the fantasy season in general. So this next story I want to get into, normally we wouldn't do on Sports from the Couch. Normally this would be a subject matter for the Good Brothers, but this is something that it's conveniently brought into the sports world when, you know, everything is sunshines and rainbows, but then it's kind of put to the side when we have some real stuff to talk about. And that is the WWE and sports and entertainment, that entire business. And this comes from WrestlingInc.com. And of course, you guys know, if you listen to me on the Good Brothers, how I feel about the dirt sheets and whatnot. But this report seems to get a lot of traction and it seems to get a lot of, you know, validation and verification from a lot of different former talent, current talent, and major reporters from the wrestling world. So I'll go ahead and read some of what was posted about this. Vince McMahon issued an edict this past week that talents can no longer, quote, engage with outside third parties, which most assume include platforms like Cameo and Twitch. WWE held a call with talent last Sunday regarding the reinvention of the product. During the call, it was said that WWE owns the real names of talent, not just their character names. McMahon followed up by sending a letter on Thursday. McMahon wrote that it was imperative that they promote and protect the brand in every conceivable way, and that talent has 30 days to stop engaging with third parties. Quote, some of you are engaged with outside third parties using your name and likeness in ways that are detrimental to our company, McMahon wrote. It is imperative that these activities be terminated within the next 30 days by Friday, October 2nd. Continued violation will result in fines, suspensions, or termination at WWE's discretion. McMahon wrote that these actions are necessary as part of WWE's rebuilding process as they, quote, enter the phase of growth at WWE, end quote. And then they mentioned finally here, it will be interesting to see if this is legal in any way. WWE wrestlers are classified as independent contractors, which if you guys want to, I highly suggest you check out HBO's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He really goes deep on it and gives WWE the whipping that they deserve. But this is crazy, guys. This is what we're talking about when we talk about college football, except these are grown-ups. You know, you're telling an adult, you're telling a U.S. citizen, you're telling an employee that you don't own their name? Excuse me, that's why you create characters. That's why you create a Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns or The Rock. So that they can use their real name, so they can be real humans. These are independent contractors, guys. These are people that don't get health benefits, that don't get a guaranteed salary, at least that's what it was back in the day, they used to get in trouble for smoking marijuana, for doing any type of CBD, but were encouraged to take pain pills. They were encouraged to take steroids. And now you're telling them that they can't make third-party money, especially during a pandemic? You know, for a man that's really right-leaning, and this isn't a shot at politics, how can you not be pro-capitalism then? Your athletes are making money in spite of you. You are telling somebody like, let's say, a Carmella, who's with Corey Graves and they have their podcast. Are you telling me that they can't do that now? So now the only amount of money Carmella can make is what WWE determines to be what she's valued at? When she's valued at that? What if Xavier Woods, after all these years of building up, up, down, down, becoming a legitimate star in that community outside of WWE, if this was a mandate now and he was just starting? That means Xavier Woods would never be able to get that opportunity to do something. We would not know Austin Creed, a.k.a. Xavier Woods. This right here is one of those moments where much more than creative, much more than production, much more who's winning championships, all that nonsense. This is real. Kevin Nash once said the only thing real about wrestling is the money and the miles. And you're taking away money from your employees who you fight tooth and nail to not let unionize. That you make sure you tell people that they're independently contracted. This is disgusting, if it's true. And the fact that you have a man who's closer to his 80s telling people who have another 40 years, God willing, on this planet to make money that they can is ridiculous. This is an organization. This is a corporation that's just like Disney, that's just like the NFL, that's just like NBC, any one of your favorite things on Netflix. That's what this is. And this is how they're treating their employees. So if you, by any means, agree with when people say college players should get paid, anybody that's willing to pay you for a service or for a talent, you should be able to get as much money as possible. That's this case right now. And then they throw it around and say, well, because we're like that, if you have a great season, you lace up your boots and you work hard, you'll be able to make as much money as you are able to hustle. They're trying to do that and you took it away from them. They're making names for themselves in spite of the fact that you won't let them use your IP. You know, it's one thing to say you can't be Dean Ambrose at AEW. You have to be Jon Moxley. Okay, yeah, they own the name Dean Ambrose. They don't own the name Terry Bollea. They own Hulk Hogan, right? How can you tell, though, Terry Bollea, that he can't go out and do a cameo as a Kurt Angle can't? That's his real freaking name. An Olympic gold medalist. You better be guaranteeing these people YouTube channels, podcasts within your own network that you don't utilize, that your YouTube channel, that you recycle the same old videos over and over again. This weird deal you have with ESPN where some of your hosts are able to go, but some of them aren't, where you pretend to be kayfabe, but you pretend not to. And if you're ESPN and you have this deal with them, if you're Fox Sports and you have this deal with WWE, can you not put a little pressure to take care of what's the most important thing, and that's the talent? To me, this is a sign that they're selling WWE at some point. That this is not long for the McMahon family. Let me know what you think. As sports fans, what do you think about this? Talents being told they can't make money from third parties even while using their real names. And then the owner telling them he owns those names as well. Let me know your thoughts on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. And finally, before we head out of here, I want to take a look at a few things in Major League Baseball along with the NBA playoffs. Really fast in the NBA playoffs. Jimmy Butler's Miami Heat up 3-0 over Giannis, who's going to probably be the defending two-time now MVP of the NBA's Bucks. And they just beat them yesterday. That is Friday, 115-100. Another look at some other series. Boston is up 2-1 over the Raptors. The Raptors came back and hit that game winner just a few days ago. You have the Clippers who beat the Nuggets on Thursday, 120-97. The poor Nuggets who had to do such a quick turnaround. And last night, the Lakers fall to the Rockets, 112-97. Houston goes up 1-0. Today on Saturday, we have the Raptors and the Celtics. We have the Nuggets and the Clippers. And on Sunday, we get ourselves Bucks, Heat, Rockets, Lakers. We'll end up seeing what happens with this Bucks series. I've been saying it for about 2 years now. I thought Giannis was destined to go to South Beach. This is even before the whole Jimmy thing. I always thought Pat Riley was going to find a way to get him down there. Taxes are good, money is good, weather is good, and the Eastern Conference is pretty weak, especially in that division within the Eastern Conference. And after seeing this, what's going on right now with Middleton and no Bledsoe, and it's not a good team. This team, Giannis is a one. I don't know what Richard Jefferson was talking about. Giannis is the one on a team. He can lead a team to a championship, but look at who he's going against. And look at, let's say you're a dominant team like the Toronto Raptors, your championship pedigree, you got guys who have been there, and you got really good players. You become the Celtics, and you're a team that's guard heavy, and not just decent guards, not just okay guards, top tier guards in this league. And that's just those two teams. You move on to Miami. Miami might be the darling of the Eastern Conference for the next few years when they're playing completely right. I think now they've turned it out because Jimmy is willing them that way. But when they're firing on all cylinders, Miami might be the best team in the Eastern Conference. But being down 3-0, and you know, you got to give them a little bit of a pass on one of those because of the fouls that were being called back and forth, especially to end that game. But without a shadow of a doubt, this is a huge series for free agency moving forward. And I know Bulls fans have their heads in the clouds. I get it. You want Giannis. It's not going to happen. It's not. I want it to. You got to be looking elsewhere. You better be trying to pull the heartstrings of Anthony Davis to try to get him over here from Los Angeles. Or you find a way to get a Devin Booker, a Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, somebody like that. Otherwise, you're stuck where you're at right now. And it looks like the Bucks are just kind of stuck on neutral. They just can't get over that hump. We'll see if Miami can finish off this series and get themselves to a Eastern Conference Finals, and what's going to be an awesome series between the Raptors and the Celtics continue on. We'll have our eyes on this Rockets-Lakers series because the Rockets were put through the test themselves with that series against Portland to start off with. Didn't end that way because, like we said was going to happen, Portland ran out of gas. But the Lakers don't have an easy second out. I think the Clippers are going to have a much easier second round than they did their first round against Dallas. I like the Nuggets. I'm adopting the Nuggets as my Western Conference team because of what they were built by from AK, who is now hopefully going to do the same thing for the Chicago Bulls. But how can you not love the NBA? Some great times. And speaking of loving these times, the Chicago Cubs, the Chicago White Sox, both winners on Friday. The White Sox won 7-4 over the Royals. The Cubs beat the Cardinals 4-1. Taking a quick look at the standings, the Chicago Cubs at 23-15 lead the NL Central. The rest of the division goes 18-19 Brewers, the 14-15 Cardinals, who still got to make up a bunch of games, the 17-22 Reds, and the 12-25 Pirates. Looking at the rest of the National League, you have the Braves at 23-15, the Phillies at 19-15, the Marlins at 16-17, the Mets at 17-22, and your defending National League champion, World Series champion Nationals at 13-24. In the NL West, the Dodgers are rolling and steamrolling through. They are 30-10. The Padres at 24-16. The Rockies at 18-20, coming back down to earth. The Giants at 18-21, and the Diamondbacks at 15-24. So even with all the ups and downs, even though going 5-5 in the last 10, the Cubs have found a way to kind of set themselves straight. Tyler Chatwood on the IL, Jose Quintana on the IL, but this pitching staff, being led by Yu Darvish, are finding ways to win games and to keep their lead. And that's why it was so important to having such a hot start to the regular season in this shortened pandemic season. The Cubs making a few moves right before they tread that line. Nothing huge, nothing that's going to shatter the roster, but trying to just fill up some of these gaps that they had that would have cost them in the World Series, some arms, some left-handed bats, but we'll see how that ends up playing out. And in the American League Central, we move to the South Side as the Chicago White Sox are 24-15 with a half-game lead in the division over Cleveland, who's 23-15. The Twins at 24-16, so half-game lead over those two division rivals. The Tigers at 17-19, and the Royals at 14-25. Quite simply, if the pitching staff can keep the ball in the yard, their offense will crush the ball out of the yard, and they will win a lot of games. They're 7-3 in the last 10. And I love what this White Sox team is doing. Again, a team that didn't have to make a move. They didn't get Mike Clevenger. I love that they didn't mess up what they have going right now. Let this team gel, and let's see what you got. And if next offseason you're able to make a good, smart move to better this team, then yes, do it. Don't be afraid to make a move. But if you feel good about what you got going on right now and what could be a serious run in October, leave it alone and let them do their thing. Let them mature together. I think that was the smartest move. Sometimes the best move is a move you didn't make. And this is one of these scenarios. There was no need to make a move that you would have done in 2009. Be smart about it. Continue the process, and it'll work out like it's doing right now with a half-game division lead over two really solid teams in Cleveland and Minnesota. This White Sox offense is pure fire, and if you're not having fun, you don't have a pulse. And looking at the rest at the American League really fast, we go to the AL East. Who would have seen this coming? With a 5.5-game lead, you have the 27-12 Tampa Bay Rays. You have the 21-17 Yankees, 21-17 Blue Jays. The Orioles came back down to earth at 17-21, and the rebuilding Boston Red Sox at 13-27. Shout out to Tampa Bay. We'll see how long that ride goes. In the AL West, another surprise team in the 22-13 Athletics, who have a 2-game lead over the 21-16 Astros. You have the Mariners at 16-22. Joe Madden's Angels at 14-25, and the Rangers in the basement at 13-24. Some fun teams in the American League, a very strong American League. Very unfortunate for some of these teams who are going to be able to make the playoffs, which is very fortunate in that end that there's so many good teams we'll see a great playoffs. But also there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be bounced by ball clubs they didn't see coming before the pandemic, and it's going to make for an interesting October. Hopefully we get there safe and sound and all these teams remain healthy. There's been COVID scares here and there the last few weeks, but it looks like we might be getting to October, and we might be getting to that bubble in Texas to see the MLB playoffs. We'll see if they end up going with that bubble idea, but we'll have more to talk about at the end of this weekend. A huge weekend series for the Cubs and the White Sox with division rivals, and a chance for both teams to give themselves an even more cushion in the division lead. But that'll do it for us on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Follow me on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. Be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Give us a like, rate, and review us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the network at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. There, you can get our interviews ad-free and before anybody else with athletes and celebrities. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. A bunch of cool stuff you can wear heading into this fall season. That's teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. And play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy all the games. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.